endeavors on campus and anything innovative. So really, if you guys are familiar with Startup Tucson at all, they're kind of the U of A's wing for Startup Tucson. The goal for Startup Tucson really is to, do all the things that you just mentioned, kind of prevent brain drain, promote, innovative commerce within Tucson. And so far they've been doing great work. They've been working with a lot of startups and helping them get capital, get any of the resources they need. They hold workshops where you can come with your business idea and leave with a model. Like they just had Startup Weekend this past weekend, and they'll probably do it again next semester, where you come, you spend the entire weekend here, and in this, actually it wasn't this library, it was at CoLab this time, and essentially you get in a group of people who are like, you label yourself as like someone who's good at marketing, engineering, whatever your skill may be, communications, and then you try to get in a team with people of other skill sets, and take an idea and work on proving your concept, and by the end you want to get a business plan. So that's just one example of the kind of like events that they do. This space specifically, I can tell you a lot more about. So this is a new effort from the library to kind of house more innovation at the U of A. And this is really like a pilot space. We're going to do the best we can here for as long as we can, and hopefully, eventually, this can be a bigger area of the library. Essentially, this is a place where anyone can get access. For the cat card swipe on the door, if you just kind of come to one of our little orientation workshops and we tell you about the space. Here, our goal is to take any student's idea and help them make it a reality. So it really is that vague, and that's the point. So you can come here to learn about new technologies, if let's say you're experienced with the technology and you want to teach others, anything like that. Like this right here, what's running and making all this ruckus. This is a 3D printer. We have two of them actually in the main library that are different, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but right now, if you wanted, you can actually upload an STL file to the library site, and then within a week's turnaround, you can go pick it up from the main library. So you can print anything you want already right now.
Can you tell us what you mean by an STL file?
An STL file is much like photos. You've got JPEGs, PNGs, stuff like that. STL is the most commonly printed 3D image file. You can just download things online from this website called thingiverse.com. It's just a whole bunch of open source models, or you can make your own in like Google SketchUp or SolidWorks or something. That doesn't matter. But the point is, so we've got a lot of technology like this. We don't just have printers. We've got Raspberry Pis. I could show you if you want these really, really tiny computers that are like smaller than your smartphone, and they're really, really cheap, and they're really powerful for what you can do with them. We're going to be using those to have workshops to teach people programming who have never seen it before. So that's kind of one of our other routes. So this space itself is obviously housed by the library, and we have ties to Innovate UA, but we also have ties to the College of Humanities. And so that's where, like really digital humanities is where our link is. So our goal is to kind of not only provide entrepreneurial resources, but just tech resources for those who are or aren't inclined.
So if a student in this class perhaps came up and said, I wish news could be easier for me to get on my phone, and I think that this would be the way to do it. They don't have the programming skills, but they have the idea. Is this a place for them?
Definitely. Yeah, so the student, you can come here, talk to me or Maggie, who can't be here, the other staff member, and essentially we would help put you in touch with one of the groups at Innovate UA, or maybe just some people that we happen to know. The whole point of the space is to not just get you the resources you need, but the connections. So it may be that you might just need someone who's interested in web developing and who would like to take on a new project. In which case, we've got people. We can get you in touch with people, and this is just kind of a co-working space where you might come in and see someone working on something, and you just ask them, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the whole goal of the place is, like, we have a small rule where if you're going to be doing any work in here, you have to be willing to talk about it. So if someone comes in, just ask you questions, you can learn from them, you can ask them for help, maybe they'll know something you don't know. For example, so we've actually, even though we're not completely public yet, another example is, like, we're working with the College of Humanities, and specifically the African American Studies Department, Two professors just came here to talk to us and ask us about, hey, so we have this really cool idea for motion capture to preserve traditional African dance. Can you help us? Now, none of us have ever worked with motion capture before, but of course the answer was yes. And so I did as much research as I could, and what we came up with was a system using Xbox 360 Kinects and adapters to plug them into a PC, and we recorded like traditional African dance. And what we're doing is taking the motion that we recorded from this professor dancing, and we mapped it onto a 3D model that's made for, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but Dr. Carter's Virtual Harlem project. So he has a little, for his African American Studies class, essentially to depict the Harlem Renaissance, he has 1920s Harlem in a 3D environment. And so now we're going to be working on making more animations to directly put on the models in this virtual world. And it used to be that students would go look at it in Second Life. I don't know if you guys know what that was. Second Life was kind of like a game, essentially. It's not very popular anymore, but it was an online game where it was just that. It was a Second Life, you know. Now it's going to be more accessible. Just as a program, you can just run on your desktop computer. And the really cool twist on that is you can use the Oculus Rift, which is the VR headset. We have a few of those here. So the idea for his classes would be you'd sit at a computer, you'd go into 1920s Harlem, it's all animated from real life motion, and you could walk around and just have this headset on your head and just kind of be in the experience.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about, do you need programming skills or web skills to come in here? I think that a lot of times students feel like they need to have those.
The point was that, yeah, these professors did not have the technical skill to get their idea done. And what we did was we matched them with the right people. They were able to support, you know, have their vision and guide everything along. And we had some people who did know like the programming necessary to make this project a reality.
And are the people who don't have the programming skills, are they getting some of those throughout the process as well? So this to me is something that I think is going to be incredibly important for journalists as we go forward. So Brandon mentioned Raspberry Pis. Like one of the things that the ONA club we want to do is we want to have a free speech zone that's hooked up with a Raspberry Pi and a camera, and basically you write on a whiteboard your free speech message. It's hooked in with Twitter, and it actually will tweet out the photo, right? For better or worse, but it's free speech. So people may say things that we find offensive, but being that we're journalists and we care about free speech, we are going to tweet it out. So things like that are becoming more and more important in the journalism industry, right? And the people who can do things like that and have those skills are becoming more and more valuable in journalism. And so while we may not be giving you all of those skills right now, places like Startup Tucson, places like the iSpace here on campus are the places where you can seek out that information and you can learn and you can do. I think doing is really important, right? So if you have an idea, how many of you have ever had an idea like, I wish something was different? All of you, right? I mean, everyone said, I wish. The second step is executing that. And places, I think, like iSpace here are the places where you can come and execute. And that's really, really important.
Yeah. So our whole goal is not so much to like push tech on people, but to let people realize that tech is actually just a useful tool that anyone can really learn. And so I don't know if you guys are interested, like we're going to be having workshops that are going to have set dates. So like our first one that we're going to pilot is going to be next Thursday night. We're going to be teaching people about 3D printing, expecting you to know nothing. We're just going to, you know, talk about the technology, how it works, and kind of show you hands-on how accessible it really is. And the goal is that maybe if you come once, twice, you know, maybe even 3 times if you're interested, you would know enough and feel comfortable enough with like the idea of this technology that you get excited about it, and maybe you would model something yourself and send it to the main library. So our goal is to kind of teach people and get people oriented with stuff here so that they can go out and use it elsewhere. And then aside from that, so yeah, programming. I think personally every journalist should learn a little bit of programming, or at the very least HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You need to know how to make your own website. So if you're interested in that at all, that's what the Raspberry Pis will be used for. Just think, oh, what's a Raspberry Pi? It's just a computer. We're just using them because they're cheap and it's easy to have a lot of them for workshops.
Can you show us one?
Yeah. Let me go grab it. 1 second.
And Brandon is totally right. And so you do need to know at least basic programming of some sort, right? He said CSS, HTML, JavaScript. We're going to go into some of those in class, actually, but it's going to be like a scratch the surface kind of thing. So I think that, when I was doing all of this, when I was in your place, this didn't exist. Things like this didn't exist. You guys have so many resources. You just have to go out and try them. And so I'm super excited that the library has done this on campus because it's an amazing tool. And I think the nice thing for students, I found the way we went to Startup Tucson, there was an extra barrier. It was intimidating to go work with someone that wasn't a student, someone that was a professional. And so I think having a place on campus where it's other students that you work with, I think that's going to be a lower barrier and I think more accessible for you guys.
Yeah. So if you guys want to see what these Raspberry Pis are that I keep talking about, this case is totally necessary. This right here, this is a computer. It's pretty cool. Honestly, it's about the power of your smartphone, but you'd be surprised. Our phones are incredibly powerful, and you can use this to teach anyone how to code easily. So we're going to be running a Linux operating system on it. It'll look very somewhat familiar to Windows. Really, we want to teach people basic web development in one workshop series, and another one we want to teach people Python. Because Python is probably the most user-friendly programming language for when you've never seen anything before. And I know it sounds really scary. At first, honestly, programming just sounds like it's something all those nerds do it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, just all for all those code monkeys. Really, anyone can learn how to do it. It's just writing out your thoughts and learning some new syntax on how to express it. You're really just telling a computer, hey, I want you to do this for me. And you just have to know the language, which is, you have to know what this is. So
it's like learning to speak Spanish or French, but instead of learning to speak Spanish or French, you're learning to speak the program language.
Right.
And there's logic behind it.
In real time, it tells you if you're right or wrong. So, anyway, yeah, I would really encourage all of you to at least attend, some workshop in the future. And when all of the dates are set, I can let you know. Maybe
yeah, that'd be great.
Information.
Yeah, for sure. And so we're starting on campus. We're starting an ONA club, which is an online news association club.
Perfect.
And the idea is hacking journalism.
Actually, about that right here, if you want, if you guys are going to have regular set meetings, I'd be more than happy for you guys to have them here.
Hosting here.
Yeah, okay. For now, we're also going to have the board game club is going to be meeting in here starting tomorrow.
It's pretty analog.
Well, you'd be surprised. So we're going to have a board game hackathon at the end of this semester or the beginning of next, where people will come and essentially across a night or two take an idea for a board game and make it by the end. And there will be a couple little twists. We'll make sure that every group's game has to 3D print at least one object and has to have something electronic in one way or another. And where the electronics come in, we have these things called Arduinos. I mean, this is a lot of information being thrown at once, but an Arduino is really just a little microcontroller that makes it really easy to. It's an easy way to program lights. You can have a little switch on a light, just stuff like that. You would look like all this. We've got LEDs. They would plug into these things called breadboards. I mean, if you're interested, we can teach you all about it. It's pretty fun and a headache. So.
Can you talk about, thinking of Startup Weekend, right, that just happened. So Startup Weekend was this last weekend, and people showed up with ideas, they pitched them, teams were formed, and they spent 36 hours, basically the whole weekend, working on that project, right? And so at the end of the weekend, they pitched it and launched their product, or whatever it was they were creating. Is there a space for people there that don't have tech skills?
Definitely, yeah. So the whole point is when you go to actually register for Startup Tucson, they have, I don't remember the names, but they have 4 or 5 different classifications, so to speak, where they list out different attributes and skill sets. And so I mean, one of them pertains to communication skills, just in general. If you say I specialize in communication, marketing, or just getting my ideas across, people need that, And then there's someone who says, oh, I'm a software guy, I'm a hardware guy.
Well, and I think too, we think like the only value that we have is being able to write things, right? Like that's what we do. We're good at it. There is a lot of value in that because, you know, a person who writes code all day may have a hard time putting together a sentence, right? Where you have those skills. But beyond that, journalists bring something else to the table, I think. We really talk a lot about critical thinking, about research, about understanding problems and being able to disseminate information. Those skills are really valuable in anything we do, and especially startups. So I want to just sort of inspire you guys to think beyond like all I can do is write, you know, a little bit of like a news story about what's happening. You bring a lot more to the table based on the skills that you guys already have. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about this, because I've heard a lot of students, I feel intimidated. I don't feel like I belong. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times too, I've noticed engineers tend to get too caught up with what they're actually making, and the whole point of Startup Weekend too is to really know, it's not actually about making the thing, it's about making the idea and the plan. But I think actually, you know, journalists, English majors, marketing majors, all share a very similar skill in just being able to recognize an idea and kind of poke holes at it. You know, it's like you should basically like quality control for an idea. Someone in your group might be really, really insistent on making a, I don't know, a moving mannequin or something, and you have a really, I don't know, you'd be really good at saying, oh no, this is not a good idea and this is why, or this is a great idea and this is why. Usually people like myself, you know, we get too caught up in actually designing a product and we get too, you know, personal about it, but maybe you see a completely different use case for what I'm thinking of making, or you think that's dumb, you should make it like this instead. So just keep that in mind. It's like programming is the smallest part of making software, I think. The first thing you have to do is, you know, you want to find a problem. So you got to identify the problem. You have to see, is this a problem I should even try to solve? And then once you do, see, okay, is this a problem that I'm willing to solve and people are willing to pay for? And then once you get past that, then you actually think about how you would make it. It's, you know, maybe the last thing in a 4-step, 5-step process. So keep that in mind. Definitely don't be intimidated by things like Startup Weekend. They happen every semester. Or hackathons, stuff like that. I think, you know, the culture probably needs to value idea people more than they do engineers. So.
Yeah, a lot of times what you'll see is that engineers they'll say, I have a problem, and they'll go build a solution for that problem and find out that like 3 other people in the entire world had that problem. And so they've built something that no one's going to use because they didn't do that research that comes behind it, making sure there are people who are going to use it. The other thing that I would think from a journalism perspective, with being fluent, right? Being able to converse. You may decide like, I hate programming. I'm never going to do programming ever in my life. I've experienced it. It's not for me. But even knowing how programming works, knowing the limitations, knowing the things that you can do as a journalist can give you conversational skills with the programmers at the entities that you're working on, right? So instead of going to a programmer and saying like, hey, can I do this? You can go to a programmer and say, hey, I know if we use, you know, this Raspberry Pi and a little bit of Python, we can make XYZ happen. So at the very least, being familiar can have those conversations. You can start having those conversations in a newsroom and make something really cool and tell your story in a way that maybe is unique and something that, you know, younger people might be more interested in seeing, or anyone might be more interested in seeing, using some of these programming skills and the language that you learn. I think there's often a problem in newsrooms between the programmers and the journalists because the journalists don't understand what the programmers do, and they have a hard time communicating. So just being conversational in this language can really help too. Do you guys have any questions for Brandon?
Yeah, anything at all, fair game. Questions about the space, about you know, specific things you may want to learn, how you could go about doing that.
Well, you're all journalists. You gotta have at least a question. What about? Are there hours that this place is open or not open?
To be determined, but for sure, Thursday nights from 7 to 9 will be when we are going to have workshops. Like I said, next week the first one will be 3D printing. We'll probably do that for a couple weeks before we move into anything else. If you guys are interested at all, feel free to show up, or let me know after here. Yeah, just 7 p.m. next Thursday night. Just come in and we'll give a small presentation, like really brief, about 3D printing as a technology. And the point is to keep it hands-on. So we're not going to like bore you by talking at you too much. We're going to get you guys working on like seeing 3D models, how to move them around, and how to print them, and try to convince you that this is really a useful technology and why you might consider maybe getting one in your home in the far future, something like that.
There we go.
Yeah. Is there some place on campus where you can like 3D print yourself?
Yeah. So you want to scan yourself and then print yourself. So actually, by the end of this week, all of our technology is kind of rolling in. We just ordered it all. I will have a 3D scanner set up in here within the next couple weeks. So ideally, you'd be able to come in, scan yourself or any object actually, and then it would turn into a 3D model. And it'd probably be a little clunky, so you'd have to edit it a little bit, and then you could print it out.
How much would that be?
Oh, it wouldn't cost you anything.
Oh, really?
I mean, we're trying to teach you stuff.
Thanks. To print myself, like that'd be free.
Well, I mean,
It would be in miniature, I
hope you're
imagine.
not talking to scale.
Oh, I'm talking about scale.
Oh, well, come on. You see the build plate of that thing?
Isn't there somewhere on campus you can scale it like that, like a scale?
Okay, technically, I mean, you would have to learn some 3D modeling and be able to do this, but, I mean, you could. So if you scanned your entire body, you could learn some 3D modeling, and you'd have to break them up into multiple models, and then send each model to the library, and then they would print out each part, and you put them together like Legos or glue, whatever. Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but you'd have to get real good at like SketchUp first. Yeah.
Is that printing something right now?
It is. It's actually printing a little frog. I don't know how long you guys will be here, but in case it doesn't quite finish, this is what the end result will look like if you guys want to pass it around. So yeah, that's a little 25 minutes worth of work. Just want to slowly pass it.
Other questions?
Yeah.
How difficult is it to design for yourself, like online, instead of just going on video?
No, it really just depends how complex you want to make something. To be honest, I think it's incredibly easy if you're doing like a building or something. If you guys have any experience at all with Photoshop, I'd say it's about the same level. Maybe a little bit harder just because some people have a harder time grasping 3 dimensions for the first time. But I think there's programs like Google SketchUp, for one, is incredibly accessible, and there's a lot of resources. It's as easy as clicking a sphere and a sphere will pop up, and then you resize it. Yeah, it shouldn't be any harder to learn than photo editing. Actually, even within Photoshop now, you can take photos and like protrude them and make them 3D. So what people will do a lot actually is they'll print themselves like a name tag and stuff. They'll just make a box, and then they'll type their name out, and then they'll have Photoshop protrude the name, and then they print it out. It says, oh, it's my name coming out of this thing, and I 3D printed it. Yeah. You can do a lot.
Are there any crash course like websites that would kind of give you an idea of like basic programming?
Basic programming?
Languages, like to kind of
Yes.
give you a refresher before you go to a workshop like this. If you're someone like me that would be intimidated to go something.
Yeah,
like
yes.
this, not tech
I
guy.
definitely recommend Code Academy.
Code Academy.
Yeah, so they have resources for Python, HTML, JavaScript. They're great. The only thing about it is it uses an older version of Python than I would probably use here. But if you did that, you would definitely be comfortable enough coming here. Like I said, we're expecting to be that crash course. We're gonna have workshops for people who've never seen anything. And we're not gonna get, like, obviously overnight you're not gonna be making Facebook, but we will teach you the lingo is really what the most important part is. If you can understand what all of the terms are and all of the programming jargon, there's no reason why you can't teach yourself any language.
Well, and one of the things about languages too, programming languages, is there's a basic syntax. And each language has sort of nuances, but once you kind of learn the logic, the if then, else, all programming languages have that kind of built-in sort of logic to it. And so if you learn one, it makes the next one you learn even easier to learn. It may be hard to like transition between the two, but learning the logic is a good first start.
Yeah, so Code Academy is great. It's something you can do in your free time in your browser. It'll save your progress. You'll just go in, it'll have you make little boxes that talk to you all within your browser. It's cool. So I would definitely start with that. Or if you end up, saying, "Oh, Code Academy's weird, I don't like it," try Code School. They have a lot of free stuff as well as paid. Yeah.
What material does the 3D printer use to make it?
This one specific, they're pretty much all plastic and consumer grade. This is PLA plastic, PLA or ABS. ABS is harder and smoother, but it's toxic, so we use PLA so we don't have to bend up the room. You can actually get some that are carbon fiber. Like the military uses them that actually can print titanium for airplane parts. It's really cool. Yeah, it's a plastic spool. If you see from the side, it's feeding through. If you think about it, it's kind of like a hot glue gun. It's heating up and then moving around.
What?
Oh, do you have any set dates for programming workshops?
No, but I love getting that question because now I know there really is a demand. So if I don't see why they wouldn't start in the next couple months. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would tell him your best bet is if you can, like Thursday nights from 7 to 9 would likely be the first time slot that they would come up. But a set date, I wish I could answer.
And you guys promote your workshops on the Innovate UA Facebook page?
Okay. Yeah. We're actually working on getting our own social media going
for iSpace specifically. Okay.
Yeah. Like this is really early stage. Honestly, like how much the space has changed in even just the past month is incredible. Over the summer, it was nothing.
Where do you see iSpace in a year?
In a year, I mean, it'll probably still be here, but I see a lot of open hours, people coming in, more staffed hours where you come in and you're doing your own thing, but there will be a resource available like me just to kind of be here and guide you if there's any questions. Really, it's just supposed to be an open working space where people can just make anything, and it's a nice place in the library where you don't really have to be quiet. So it's just nice.
Someone else had a question over here.
Ideally, in the far future, though, I would like to be like the whole main floor of one of the libraries. I think the library needs to move in the direction of innovation on a grander scale, and kind of keep up with some other cities where, like even San Francisco public libraries are insane with the amount of maker culture that they have. And yeah, so you have someone in front.
I was going to say, like, what kind of potential use could you have in the home for a 3D printer?
Okay, I love that you asked. So you never know, but there was one day where I really decided I needed like a pencil holder. So I just made a cylinder, cut out the middle, and printed out. And I'm like, oh, I've got one now. So it's just there was also a cabinet that I had that had a little knob on it that fell off. And I was like, okay, I could, just put this wood one back on it, but how cool would it be if I made a little plastic knob for this cabinet? Of course, it doesn't look as good as the other ones because I don't know enough about modeling it to get the perfect curvature, but the point is I was able to sit there and sketch up, design a nice little cylinder, cut out from it, and make it look like my other knob. I printed it out, and I super glued it in, and so at home I've got this little purple cabinet knob now. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
Are the workshops free?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Well.
Yeah, the workshops are free. Anything you print in the space would be free. The main library, if you do send print jobs to there, it's not free, but they don't make any money off students. It's 10 cents a gram for the actual weight, so it ends up being no more than like $5 or so for something this size. It's really cheap. They're just charging you for like the price of the composite.
Anything else you guys wonder about? You're all really interested in the 3D printer. I can tell by the questions. Anything, Brandon, that we didn't touch on that we should have that you'd want the students, specifically journalism students, to know about?
Yeah, specifically journalism students. I would say don't distance yourself at all from like maker culture in any way, because it's not just that there could be a place for you guys, it's that there definitely is a place for you guys. So yeah, I don't just keep that mindset. Don't be afraid of tech, because if you don't learn it now, you'll probably have to scramble and learn it later in the future to stay relevant. I think writing basic elements of code is going to be necessary for almost any profession in the future.
I had a friend, and I don't know, how long have you been sort of in the maker culture here?
Honestly, brand new.
Okay.
I just started I started with taking an entrepreneurship class last spring.
At McGuire?
No, it was Justin's class, the
Okay.
entrepreneurship for tech majors class, and that just got me really interested in maker culture, and then I landed this job right at the end of the semester.
I've got a friend who he programs for iOS, and one of the now he went to work for Nest, and now he's working for Udacity. He's an engineer, a software engineer, and he in Startup Tucson, his idea that he came in, and this was the first Startup Tucson they did, was for an app that you could basically send your songs to a donor phone for parties. So how many of you have ever been to a party and you're like subject to whoever's controlling the music? And sometimes they have really poor taste, probably. So you'd plug in a phone, and if you're both using the app, you could send your song. So it's like a digital jukebox. And so they built it during the 36 hours. And they had an up or down vote rating. So if I sent something to a party that you guys were all at, and it was like Frank Sinatra, and because that's me, right? And you guys were like, that is terrible. You could downvote me, and if enough of you downvoted me, anytime I send a song, it just gets buried in the phone. But the larger point here is this is what he does for a living. But he told me that, and to Brandon's point, that not knowing something about programming, not even knowing basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, in the future is going to be a literacy issue. That, like reading or not being able to read, not being able to program in the future will mean that you're illiterate. Now, that's a pretty aggressive sort of comment, but I think we're starting to head that direction a bit, where you're starting to see people who don't at least understand how programming works are getting left behind a little bit. And so I don't want to see you guys left behind. I want to see you at the forefront so that you guys can do kick-ass journalism.
Don't forget, you don't have to go add information science and computer science minors tonight. It's cool. Just maybe go to a workshop or two, know some syntax, and just so maybe in the future, when you have to submit your story to the web guy, you can write it in such a way that it'd be easier for him to upload it to the server. Just little things like that.
Perfect. All right. Well, Brandon, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And so you'll keep me up to date with what's
Definitely.
going on.
If anyone's interested at all, just maybe, if you're interested now, just let me know now so I can kind of get a head count. But for, next Thursday, 3D printing, first one.
Could we organize, we're starting O&A, but could we do some, programming for journalists and sort of focus on the journalism side of programming and what we would need to know and sort of really cater it to journalists?
Yeah, I mean,
okay. And
see, that's the point. You guys come with an idea. If there's enough people who really want this thing, we'll make it happen. Okay. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I don't see why not.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Brandon. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited.
Yeah. Mike, have you told them about MicroHack?
Yeah, so,
yeah. That's a good example of how this all can work together.
So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, take the camera. In the spring, Celeste Gonzalez-Domonte, who's one of your professors, brought the Institute for Journalism Justice, I think it is their title. They do these hacks, like hackathons you've heard about, but it was specifically called MicroHack, and they came here, brought together journalists, journalism students, programmers, different, kind of like what you've been hearing about, to work specifically on journalism stories that combined multimedia about immigration. And so they took this data about immigration and created stories over that weekend with programmers working side by side with journalists who wrote the stories and developed these multimedia stories that you can actually see online from the site. So I think it's a good example of how this kind of all merges.
Yeah, cross-pollination.
Yeah.
And there was a student in yesterday's class who actually did that. And she went and participated, and she had a little bit of basic programming skills because she's taken the web app class that we created in the journalism school. I don't know if you've heard about that. I probably have told you, but we have a mobile web app class that we teach for just journalists. We partner with Rob Weisner, who works at the Star, and you guys basically come in, you pitch an idea, we form teams around the 4 ideas, and you spend the semester building a news app. But she was in that class, so she had a little bit of experience, and she went to the MicroHack, and she was able to, she was a big reason why the team won in that it was her idea, or partially her idea. Like, she worked really hard on forming the idea and then helped the programmers that were there, and they made something really, really cool. And now, you know, she learned valuable skills. She can also put on her resume that she was on the winning team of the Migra hack, which that stuff matters to people who are hiring you. It's important information.
I think what was neat was that a lot of the tools that they showed, they had presenters, workshops, and then they did the breakout sessions, was that they were, I think, almost entirely open source, free programs that you can use, not just journalists, but other people to create things. So you wouldn't have to, you ask the question about, is it free? There's a lot of free stuff available to help you do these kind of things.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to turn off our Periscope.
Bye.
Say bye to everybody who's watching. Now there's only 2 people, but there were like 15 people who were watching at one point, so turn the camera around and put it in my beard. So sorry, broadcast people.